My name is Vant'Land. I'm the Secretary General of the International Association of Universities based in Paris at UNESCO. And the mentioning of UNESCO here today in this particular webinar in the IAU webinar series on the future of higher education, which we started now more than almost 2 years ago in the midst of the pandemic to allow universities from around the world to connect and exchange on the very many new challenges and old challenges they faced when it comes to leading the universities into the future and help society shape up in a different format as well. It's important to mention that we're based at UNESCO because we were created by UNESCO 70 years ago. We're still based at UNESCO, yet we're independent. We're a non-governmental international organization, and this position is very important as we work and rely on the participation of independent universities around the world to also respond to governments to help shape the agenda of higher education for the future together with you. And the other reason why it's so important to mention UNESCO here is that this particular webinar forms part of the preparations for the upcoming UNESCO World Higher Education Conference 2022 to start on Wednesday next week in Barcelona. This is the third World Higher Education Conference ever, and it has the aim of reshaping ideas and practices in higher education to ensure sustainable development for the planet and for humanity. And so we thought it would be very important to also contribute to that conversation by inviting the higher education leaders from around the world to share with the world, for that matter, and with UNESCO in particular, and to feed into the conversations that will start next week, but we'll have a life way beyond. To voice what you see is the current state of higher education, where it goes, and where the opportunities and challenges lay. There are a series of questions that we asked the authors to answer, but I leave that part to Trine Jensen to explain that further. But it will be very interesting to see where this conversation will lead us here today, in addition to the papers that the authors already have contributed, and to also ensure that later the recording of this very special session will be made available at the UNESCO World Higher Education Conference. It will be made available online as well for people to pick up and to hopefully initiate other conversations in other settings. And maybe that the authors who contributed to IAU Horizons will be contacted as well by many around the world looking for new ways of developing higher education, or even to simply discuss the future of the sector itself. This webinar is also very important for the International Association of Universities because it brings together many members from around the world, that first, but also allows us to help us inform our development of our own strategic plan. I heard just now from President and Vice-Chancellor Cara Aitchison that you're developing a new strategic plan at Cardiff Metropolitan University. The International Association of Universities is developing its own new strategic plan that will also run from 2022 to 2030. And will be presented at the IAU General Conference in Dublin in October. And so this conversation here and the papers that all the authors have contributed are absolutely essential in our reflection to build a better strategy for the association to serve you even better in the future. So 70 years passed, but we want to go way into the future. So without further ado, I would like to give the floor to Trine Jensen, who's the manager at Higher Education and Digital Transformation, in charge of many publications at the IAU Horizons. You've been in touch with her, but she's also one of the main authors of our recent global report on the impact of COVID-19 on higher education. And she is one of the key actors in the orchestration of a beautiful program for the upcoming IAU General Conference. So, Trine, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Hilligje, and thank you for the opening words. I think that that's very helpful. So I will just move to first of all saying welcome to our speakers and thank you for being here with us today. Welcome to all the participants joining us. I hope that you will participate in this very important conversation. As Hilligje said, we publish IAU Horizon twice a year, and we try to go over topics of interest to all. And we found that within this frame of the UNESCO World Higher Education Conference being devoted to the idea of reinventing higher education for a sustainable future, that it was essential to discuss this topic with our members around the world and include different perspectives where we see at the same time, of course, similarities in terms of some of the challenges that we're encountering or the opportunities that we're pursuing, but we also see really the necessity of looking at the local context when we think about how we move forward. So first of all, we're very pleased to launch this magazine today, and we're also pleased to report that we have a total of 38 articles in this In Focus section, plus a forward from IAU President Pam Fredman reflecting a bit on the messages. So we will share with you a little bit later in the chat the link to the magazine so that you have access to that, and I hope you'll enjoy it. Unfortunately, it's difficult for us to invite almost 60 authors to join this session. So we have instead chosen a few representing different regions of the world and therefore also different perspectives. And we're very pleased to have them here with us. And what we will do in terms of format is that we will give each of our excellent speakers an opportunity to introduce the key messages that they have highlighted in their article. And then we will turn to a more general conversation about what are the challenges, what are the key opportunities to pursue, what are the challenges, and is there really a need to reinvent higher education? That was some of the questions that we were asking based on the concept note that UNESCO was issuing for the UNESCO World Higher Education Conference. So I think that taken into consideration, let's start this tour de table. We go around the table. And because we are very delighted that Professor Yamada has joined us, even though it's very late, I will start by giving you the floor, Professor Yamada. We are very pleased to have you with us here today. And you are the Chancellor of Tokai University in Japan. So unfortunately, although the pandemic allows us to connect differently across the world, we have not yet been able to solve the issue of time zones. So it is a little less convenient on your time, but we are very grateful that you're here with us, even though it's a bit late. And please take the floor. We look very much forward to hear your thoughts on what are the key challenges and opportunities for higher education as we imagine the future.
Thank you very much for a kind introduction. Yeah, I don't mind even in 7 p.m., 9 p.m. Starting time. And one of the problems is we can solve, national border with new technology like internet connection. However, we cannot solve the time difference so far. Okay, let me introduce my presentation. It's a very significant opportunity for us to gather together in the critical situation in the world. So, and reinventing higher education for a sustainable future, reconsider the mission and role of university. This is my title, and the role of university in the world has been to educate a student to be active members or leaders in the community first. And second, person who can develop the specialized field. The third, the person who use acquired knowledge and skill directly to their professions, and the person who can be active on a global scale, as a global citizen. I think that this must be the common among us. And based on this perception, the problem in the current may see international situation. Of course, the COVID-19, in order to protect their own citizens from the COVID-19 infection, each country is becoming isolated. The problem is isolated and thinking only its own interest. Yeah, this country, the COVID-19 accelerated this, phenomenon. Used to be the people believe that the relation with the other country is very important, but so far by COVID-19, isolation policy is one of the way to protect from the COVID-19. The international exchange of the student has become significantly, so that's why the limited. Next, please. Next, please. Okay, next, please. Yes. Due to the lack of communication in the world is beginning to lose their cooperative spirit, and many regions are becoming unstable. Even though a world that respects diversity was beginning to be built, some countries are going backward, unfortunately. Next, please. So reconsider mission and role of university. Go one step further than just nurturing global citizens. One step further, state that it is to nurture the human resource who can contribute to the world peace. Tokai University's mission, I would like to introduce to you, to nurture the human resources who will be responsible for creating the history of tomorrow toward the realization of happiness and peace and for mankind. As global university, to respect diverse values and develop an activities that contribute to the construction of our society where the people of the world can coexist. Next, please. So one of the good example we would like to introduce is the Asian Pacific University President Conference. From 1987 to 2005, president and directors of the 60 country universities and the research institutions participated and openly discussed what university and research institute can do to maintain the peace and the political stability in the world. You know, now many of conference which was organized by the university and inviting the many university presidents discussing the issue of their educational mission or way of exchange or credit transfer so far. But this conference was organized by our founder. Our founder has passed away 1990, but at almost end of the Cold War, the university president has to accelerate to end the Cold War. So during the Cold War, Tokai University has exchanged with university in the Soviet Union or in Eastern European countries to keep open the dialogue for mutual understanding. So that's why still we can keep the kind of connection to Russian universities, but officially we cannot penetrate to them. But after this disaster, we would like to restart the relation with them. So all students are required to take classes called Modern Civilization, which is an obligatory required subject. This class presents the students with the problem of world from the past and to the present, and ask them to think about how people around the world can work together to build a peace. So, and our university strong mission is to the peace building. We need to restructure higher education with its mission and role to develop human resources who can contribute to the peace building. Universities around the world should urgently consider contributing to helping to establish a sustainable future of the world. Yes, of course, it is easy to say, but difficult to realize. I understand. However, we have to keep this mission in our mind. Thank you very much for attention.
Thank you very much, Professor Yamada, for your presentation and for highlighting this. I think that it's a very beautiful message to send. I mean, of course, university is partly about preparing students for the world of work, but this mission is, I think, even more noble, preparing students to be able to create the type of peaceful society that we want for everyone. So thank you very much. We look forward to coming back to you to discuss this further with you. But I'm now going to turn to Professor Khuri, who is with us from Lebanon. I know that you will not be able to stay with us for the end of the session, so we will definitely give you the floor now and hear from you. I know that in the past we have often heard a lot about the challenges coming from COVID, but I think that what we also see in your article in Lebanon, it is not one challenge that you're faced with, it's multiple challenges and crises taking place at the same time. So we're very pleased to give you the floor and get some information about what you see as the key challenges, but also opportunities for moving forward in this context.
Thank you very much, Trine. I'm going to try to be brief since you have my article to read. I'll try to get this done in 3 to 4 minutes to leave time. So as many of you may know or may not know, Lebanon is a small country. It's often seen as something of an important contact point between East and West. It's located on the eastern shore of the Mediterranean. It's a country with about 4.5 million citizens. One of the differentiators for Lebanon is it has the highest per capita population of displaced non-resident aliens, refugees to citizens. Almost 25% of the inhabitants of Lebanon are non-Lebanese, be they Syrian or Palestinian refugees or others. The university, however, is the oldest university in the MENA region at 156 years. And yet the last 3 years have been a significantly steep learning curve, as you just pointed out. So well before COVID, in the summer of 2019, we had not only forest fires, but the impending specter of economic collapse. Lebanon had long been run on a clientelist system, whereby more and more country was brought in from the diaspora and who were offered very high interest rates that were unsustainable. And the economy was built on what could be described as something of a Ponzi scheme, where money came in, people got interest, their money was in the bank. And then in the fall of 2019, things began to collapse when the wealthiest individuals started to withdraw their monies from the banks, and then the country suffered probably what's been described by the World Bank as the third worst economic collapse since the mid-19th century. That being said, some $200 billion disappeared from bank accounts and people are left with very little. The current reserves are around 11 to 12 billion, whereas they had been in the 100+ billion range. What this meant is at the same time that COVID was happening, people no longer had access to their funds. And what happened with this concatenation of crises, loss of confidence in the government, collapse of one government after another, severe financial constraints, and COVID, is that we lost a significant number of our top faculty and staff, and we also operate the finest medical center in the region. You could do many things. You could do the hedgehog or porcupine approach, but we chose to try to learn from this and to expand our horizons and to make our relevance more significant. To build on something Dr. Yamada just said, one of the things we felt that we needed to do is to learn from these crises. So we helped lead the national vaccination campaign, which was launched on Valentine's Day 2021, as a consequence of which we vaccinated 99.6% of our students, faculty, staff, and alumni. And we were able to bring people back onto campus in October of 2021 as a consequence of that. We've also had to navigate this severe financial crisis, whereby we went, for example, from getting about $240 million annually in student-related fees, much of it grants, but about 180 of it from student remittances, to the last semester where that was $6 million. So that's obviously a severe financial blow, about 5% of our prior revenues. However, we've been adjusting the tuition, we're adjusting our revenue streams. Last year, we had our greatest number of research grants in the history of the university, and we're reshaping our educational mission. To go to the point that Dr. Yamada pointed out, we have expanded our liberal arts and our general education portfolio to include a greater swath of liberal arts education, even in the professional areas. We're expanding our experiential learning. We believe that higher education needs to move beyond this rote memorization, overly focused classroom lecture-based learning to a more interactive approach, a more experiential approach, and to increase our online offerings, not only for our college and graduate and professional schools, but for lifelong learners. So we're reshaping our approach to higher education. Winston Churchill once said, "Never waste a good crisis." He's one of many people who said that. And we hope that we have not shaped that good crisis, terrible crisis, as it were. How have we done that? Well, we've done it by expanding our experiential and online educational offerings and empowering the citizen leaders among our students, faculty, and staff. On top of all of this, we had the fourth worst non-nuclear explosion ever in the Beirut port blast, which cost 200 people, 200 innocent victims, their lives, plus destroyed or damaged the housing of some 300,000 people. Our students, faculty, and staff were the first to respond to that, and we are attempting to formalize that component of citizenship, of participation in our education. Dr. Yamada spoke about the need for universities to step up. We agree with that. We think that the future, a better future, a more inclusive future in a world that has been growing apart for some time. Some could argue for a couple of decades, but certainly the last 5-6 years, it's been quite overt. And we now face a serious war in the Ukraine. We are exceptional at this university at dismissing the fear of the other, at letting people be close to individuals that they would have thought of as foreign to them, as enemies. The last 5 years, we've had students from 100 different countries attend the American University of Beirut. And we want to take advantage of that to develop a model of global citizenship to continue to focus on excellence for its own sake, but also for the greater good, and to bring people together in a more global model of citizenship. So I'll stop there and I'll say thank you for inviting me.
Thank you very much, Professor Khuri, for sharing your experience. And I think that it is a pleasure reading the positive tone that you put into the article, although that we really see the multiple challenges that you're confronted with. And I think that you also mentioned that out of this comes the fact that you have really seen how the students have been able to engage with the community and bringing value to the local setting as well. That's really an important part of it as well. We're going to move on so that we can also turn to the conversation a bit later. Cara, I'm going to turn to you now. Cara, Aitchison is the President and Vice-Chancellor of Cardiff Metropolitan University in Wales, part of the United Kingdom. So now we move to a different setting, and Cara, we're very much looking forward to hearing your perspectives as well.
Thank you, Trine, and thank you for the invitation to speak today. And just to give a little bit of context, very interesting what the previous speaker was saying about globalization and creating global citizens. Cardiff Metropolitan is based in Cardiff, which is the capital city of Wales, one of the 4 nations of the UK. And we're a medium-sized UK university. We have 12,000 students based on 2 campuses here in Cardiff. And we also have a further 10,000 students around the world in 17 partner colleges in 15 countries, including in Lebanon. And they're studying our transnational education programs. And I think one of the challenges for us is to build that global community and to get connections built between our on-campus and off-campus students. And the piece that I wrote was really about compassionate leadership for a post-pandemic planet. And it asked the question of what role can university leaders play in establishing a more prosperous, greener, and fairer world. And I think the pandemic has emphasized how our world is both increasingly connected, but also deeply divided. And in the post-pandemic era, the most important role that education must surely play is in building those bridges and bonds, if we evoke Putnam, to establish a world that's more prosperous, greener, fairer. And I think there are really changes required in 5 areas that I want to focus on very briefly, and I hope we can expand in these in the discussion. So firstly, on compassionate leadership. Secondly, something about curriculum and learning. Thirdly, research and innovation. And then fourthly, campus culture. And then finally, I want to turn my attention to partnerships, those partnerships that are required to widen our reach and deepen our impact. So firstly, on compassionate leadership, I think the pandemic has really demonstrated the need for leadership that's underpinned by values that cut across nationalities and religions, to give us a shared moral compass that can guide us through what we've seen as the worst of times, but to bring out the very best in our students and staff. And for me, compassionate leadership isn't about accepting or tolerating poorer performance when the going gets tough. It's about supporting all members of our community to achieve their full potential. And it's our role as leaders to clear the path of the barriers to success, whether those barriers be driven by cultures of inequality or inadequate resources, or perhaps poor structures and processes, or even a lack of ambition and self-belief that we sometimes see in our students and in our colleagues. Secondly, on curriculum and learning, this must be fit for purpose in our post-pandemic future. And I think we've already heard this afternoon, we now accept that, many of the global challenges, they won't be solved by the old ways of siloed disciplinary thinking. And we need to enable our students to develop, we talk here about constellations of learning that's connected by interdisciplinary theory and practice. And we've established something at Cardiff Met that we call the Cardiff Met Edge. And the Edge stands for ethical, digital, global, and entrepreneurial. And it's about developing that thinking and practice that enables every student to develop a whole range of competencies and skills that go beyond the traditional or the conventional classroom-based learning. And then thirdly, in relation to research and innovation, again, the solutions to those entrenched global challenges will be found in the interface of multiple disciplines rather than in those old established centres. And at Cardiff Met, we've developed what we call global academies to develop top postgraduate programmes, research and innovation in areas where the university has a very strong track record of interdisciplinary work. And around 30% of our students are postgraduate, around 20% of our Cardiff-based students are international, and similar to the case we just heard from, well over 100 countries. And these global academies are designed to deliver local, national, and international reach and impact. And in addition to contributing to the 17 UN Sustainable Development Goals that I think many of us are focused on around the world, within the UK, we've recently established what we call 12 levelling up missions. How do we create that rising tide that lifts all ships for all students? And then in Wales, we also have an additional 7 well-being goals. And these have been identified in a piece of legislation passed in 2015 called the Well-being of Future Generations Act. So all the decisions that we make in Wales are designed to enhance the well-being of future generations. And then my fourth point is that, COVID and its associated lockdowns and online learning, it's really forced us, I think in quite a positive way, to rethink campus culture. And those bonds that bind us together as a society, they were often missing through lockdown. Our students spent months in their, lockdown study bedrooms. And we're really challenged with recreating many of those bonds that build a sense of community and a sense of belonging on campus. And that, I think, has forced us to question quite overtly, in a way that many of us have been questioning perhaps more quietly through our entire careers, the didactic lecture. And instead, we've begun to value the questioning approach of education that's much more interactive, it's more meaningful, it's more memorable. And our students want not just value for money by attending university, but they want now value for time in coming onto campus. And there's a real thirst to rebuild that sense of belonging and strength in community. And then finally, I think, we're very focused now on building partnerships within and between our communities, businesses, industry and government, and international networks that provide those bridges and bonds that will develop perhaps new and even deeper connections between education and those that our universities seek to serve. And we've very much questioned our purpose and mission throughout the last 2 years. And I just want to share really an example of one initiative that we've developed here. And we'd actually developed this just pre-pandemic, and it's starting up again now. We call it Open Campus, and it's a partnership that's created to foster civic engagement, to improve public health and increase access to education. An Open Campus is a collaborative partnership between the university's academic programs in sport and initial teacher education, 2 areas we have a very strong tradition in, with 30 schools in Wales, where the university's sport services and the local council sport development function, which we run in partnership, is delivered to over 6,000 children each year. And they have an opportunity to come on campus to experience health, well-being, sport, nutrition advice, but also to see what it might be like to be the first person in their family to come to university. So just in conclusion, to wrap up, as leaders, I think we've got an opportunity to be the post-pandemic progressive custodians of our universities. We must preserve the traditions on which our universities were founded, such as academic freedom and institutional autonomy. But I think we've also got an opportunity now to advance knowledge, challenge the status quo, and champion change that will build those bridges and bonds to a more prosperous, greener, and fairer world for our future generations. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much, Cara, for your introduction to your article. And again, a very inspiring, I think, approach to seeing the role of higher education, because already throughout the three first presentations, I think that when I think of our theme for our upcoming General Conference in Dublin, which is relevance and value of higher education to future society, what I hear across your presentation is really a reaffirmation of the crucial role that higher education institutions play in order to build the type of societies that we want. I will now turn to our final speaker. Last but not least, we are very pleased to have you with us as well, Professor Isaac Olusola Fajana, who is the Vice-Chancellor of the National University of Lesotho. So now we are flying from the UK directly to Lesotho, and we're looking very much forward to hearing about your perspectives as well, yet another context, and what are the challenges that you see right now and the opportunities to pursue moving forward. So Isaac, you have the floor, and you're welcome to share.
About the world, I would like to say that I'm delighted to join this call. I'll be speaking on the theme of this conference, which is coming up, Reinventing Higher Education, Reflections on Problems and Prospects from the Global South. My name is Shola Fajana, Vice-Chancellor, National University of Lesotho. My university is a public institution. Having been founded some 77 years ago. We are the only publicly funded university in the national, in the Kingdom of Lesotho. We are a conventional university rendering educational services in all the arts, sciences, technology, and all of that. We have local and foreign students and staff, and we have a population of about 10,000 students right now. For this particular presentation, I will be sharing experiences both from Nigeria, where I had the opportunity to serve as Vice-Chancellor in another university. And then I'll also be sharing experiences from what we have seen in my current assignment in Lesotho. Our objective generally, because I'm talking about the Global South, is to highlight challenges from the perspectives of the Global South. Basically, our institutions are charged with a mandate. We want to be resilient, we want to be agile, competent, we have a character for reputation, and we believe in global competitiveness. And these are the kind of things we want to reinvent, because right now, all over the world, there are challenges to the achievement of all of those ideals that I've listed here. Developing countries have very weak industrial base. So in terms of even the affordability and access of our students, it is not there. It's very, very problematic. Nevertheless, the governments have invested in reforms which have led to digitalization of education and increased focus on science, technology, and innovations. So we are doing well somehow, even though the issue of access to education is still a very big problem there, somewhere there. So now we are coasting on, but there are emerging challenges. Number one is the fact that we were not ready when COVID came. Whereas in the rest of the world, we're already having artificial intelligence and robots being deployed in the classrooms to teach. These things are not available in the Global South. Rather, inadequate internet bandwidth aging servers, and many other challenges. Epileptic power supply still continues to stare us in the face. Another challenge is the organizational and national politics, political instability, both within our institutions and within the nations. And in some cases, like in the case of Nigeria, where you have very serious security problems, even the hostels, the residences are not safe from terrorists, who come occasionally to cause problems. In a country like Lesotho, where I'm currently serving, a major problem is the drop in subventions, government grants becoming smaller and smaller, posing a very serious challenge to our operations. Then we also having challenges in the area of talent management, problems to attract, to retain, and to motivate credible staff. And of course, you would agree with me that indeed, if you really want to have a reinvented education environment, we need to have credible staff attracted, retained, and motivated. There is also the publication requirement. In academics, we say you publish or you perish. So what do we have? Self-publishing, Vantage publishing. So many of our lecturers are victims of predatory journals. All of these things are still very much with us, notwithstanding everything that the gentleman called Bills had done to warn researchers of being shortchanged because they are hungry publishers and all of that. Then we also have this situation whereby the academic group that is credible is depleting because of brain drain from the global south to mostly the global north. In addition to this, young academics need a reorientation of their values. We'll talk about that later on. Even older academics are unwilling to mentor younger ones. So there are challenges all over the place. And lastly, academics seems to be becoming jobs of regressed aspirations. What do I mean by that? In the past, people take on jobs where they believe they have an interest, where they believe they can continue to have a career. But because of the serious scourge of unemployment, a lot of graduates are now going for a career in academics, which they didn't prepare for, which they didn't even have the calling for. And so many of them today are struggling. They are struggling with values of humanism, sacrifice, having your student being at your focus, issues of transparency, issues of not willing to remain steady, maturing gradually over time. And all of these are traits, values that describe the true academic calling. And these things are depleting. So what does it mean? How do we begin to reinvent? How do we get our lecturers to have a return to the good old days of credible academics? At the National University of Lesotho, we have a center. It's called a Center for Teaching and Learning. This center is trying to do a lot of correctives to some of these challenges. So we now have a postgraduate diploma in higher education, which is to prepare our lecturers to get them to begin to appreciate and manifest the values of education, values that actually drive education. So if they have come without teaching qualifications or whatever, we try to make sure that they get those weaknesses removed by going through our Center for Teaching and Learning. Fortunately, the Center for Teaching and Learning recently acquired the status of a Center of Excellence awarded by the Commonwealth of Learning from Canada. And with that, we are able to offer a lot of solutions to our problems. Now, how do we reinvent? How do we look forward to the future? Again, some of my colleagues have talked about this earlier on. We need to strengthen academic linkages and provide support for our students, especially from the less developing countries. And then, of course, the issue of internationalization. We have to ensure that we create the environment to encourage both foreign students and foreign lecturers to be able to thrive on our campuses. On account of the dwindling funds coming from government, we need to think about internally generated revenue so that we can augment and be able to finance our operations. With regards to the issue of COVID and our pedagogy during COVID, we discovered that we would need to have appropriate pedagogies, both in and out of the pandemic. The reason is that some of our lecturers, especially from the STEM courses, raised issues of quality with regards to virtual learning. How do you teach practical classes online? You know, those are the kind of challenges that we have. But with the appropriate pedagogies, I think we should be able to go through it. But all of these things need money, and these monies don't come very, very cheaply. Then part of the prospect that we are thinking about is giving our students, our current students, a wow experience, which we can leverage on so that when they become alumni members, they will remember the experience they went through when they were with us, and they will then be able to give back to the university. The reason is that without this alumni funding, financial advancement for universities become really, really a problem. Let me conclude this way. In the future of higher education in the global south is bright against the backdrop of the increasing demand for education by our youths. When I talk about our youths, 70% of the population of Africa are aged below 30 years and below, accounting for 70% of our population, which means that globally speaking, Africa is the place where the rest of the world should turn to when you are looking for youthful labor force that are very enterprising and have the skills to replenish even countries like Canada, where the population is aging. There's now a conscious effort to bring people from developing countries to give the kind of life that is required in places like Canada, even the UK, and sometimes even the US. So what do we do? So we are not afraid of exporting our students and graduates to other countries. But what is important is that before they get exported to those countries, we need to develop them, give them the right skills that are required, skills that will make them to be employable, skills that will ensure that they excel wherever they go in the rest of the world. Reinventing higher education. To increase the probability of achieving a reinvented environment, higher education leaders have an obligation to deploy global actions to instigate excellence at the national levels. I think at this point, I'd like to just pause. Thank you for your attention and hope that we can continue the conversation as we discuss. Thank you very much, Trine.
Thank you very much, Professor Fajana, for taking us to Lesotho and also partly to Nigeria and sharing your experience and providing some context as well as to what are the external factors that actually impact what you can actually do. I mean, we also saw that in our global survey report on the impact of the pandemic on higher education, that particularly in Africa, we see that at the same time, public funding is going down, but also tuition fees, making it a particularly tough context to reinvent the way that you aspire to. So thank you for sharing at the same time the context, but also some of the structural issues within the institutions that need to actually change in order to be able to deliver the type of higher education that you're inspiring to. And then, of course, with the positive note that we do see an increasing youth population in Africa. So there is a demand for higher education. So we need definitely agreeing to that investing in higher education is a key message in order to continue to develop in your context. So thank you to all four of you for sharing your presentations. And I think that we will now turn to the conversation. So let me also say to the participants that are with us, please do not hesitate to share any questions that you would like to raise or to ask any of our speakers here. You're very welcome to share those in the Q&A or in the chat. We will monitor that, and we will move to this part of the session where we'll go into a discussion, and Hilligje will join me for that part. But let's open with the first question. I think that what came across in all of the presentations is the importance of international collaboration as part of the reimagining higher education. Professor Yamada, you were referring to the fact that partly the pandemic has actually brought many national responses and kind of broken part of the international collaboration as we saw it before. We see also trends in terms of declining international student opportunities because of the restrictions that have been in place during the pandemic. So really the importance of rebuilding the international collaboration. Professor Fajana, you were referring to the fact that this is actually also important in the way that how we want to develop a higher education institution in Africa to create those connections and to work together as well in the way that we build curriculum and opportunities for our students. And Cara, it was also one of your key messages that your university is international as such and that it is important. So I want to give you again the floor to reflect on that. What do we need to do to take this to the next level? How can we ensure that we collaborate in order to pursue all these ambitions that you have brought forward here today? So Professor Yamada, I'll start by giving you the floor and then we'll go around the table. You're muted. Yeah, thank
you. Yes, you know, so far I can find you know, effective solution, but you know, we have to remind the students the importance of international collaboration, and some of the young generation is now trying to looking into their own countries more than seeing outside of the country. But the educators' responsibility is to change their mind and open their eyes to the world. You know, the diversity is one of the key words. But you know, current situation and you know, authoritarian countries, you know, they ignore the diversity. You know, they put the value as you know, identity. So, and of course, identity is one of the good value for us to, you know, live in the world society, but not as the identity, but, you know, diversity altogether, you know, we have to keep in mind. You know, it's a very difficult for the time being, you know, the two breeze to experience of the diversity is we have to our student sent to the another society. You know, the compared with another country, the Japan is kind of homogeneous society. So that's why I'm very much afraid of current tendency, you know, spread to the Japanese students. So to avoid them, to avoid this problem, I encourage them to go abroad. But of course, pandemic restrict us to do that. But this kind of webinar or remote discussion, to some extent, help, I believe.
Thank you very much. And that also for the positive words, because it is the mandate of the IAU to try to bring together leaders of higher education across the world. So it's what we try to do through our series in general and through our different activities. But yes, I think that it is important, as you say, to include the openness towards the world or the international dimension in curricula somehow across the different disciplines. It's what I hear, that it's something that we have to ensure is part of the education as well. Cara, I wanted to hear as well if you want to jump in here on this question.
Thank you. Yes, and I think in my talk I referred to COVID as being, I often speak of it in that Dickensian way of it was the worst of times, but it brought the best out of our staff and students. And I think one of the things it's shown us is we've previously sometimes been too limited in our ambition. And, as leaders, I think it's incumbent on us to be ambitious for our institutions and for the people our institutions serve. And those people we serve are all around the world. And I think we mustn't be limited by the scope and scale that we might currently imagine for our reach and impact. And I just really want to give an example. It's a very European example focused on Ukraine that I think perhaps speaks to some of the things that previous speakers, Professor Yamada, you just talked about the need for us to open our eyes. And I think that's very much what education is about. But it's also about opening people's hearts. So it's eyes and hearts. And I think that taps into this notion of compassionate leadership. And Professor Khuri talked about the way in which in Lebanon, by necessity, there's been a need to embrace the other, to educate people to embrace the other. It's a very complex country and society. And I think we all have lessons to learn from Lebanon. And that some of those lessons within Europe at the moment are about the way in which we are providing a welcome to Ukrainian refugees, those who are displaced from Ukraine, but more importantly, to prevent and avert brain drain, the way in which we support the rebuilding of Ukraine. And I just want to give an example of some of the things we're doing here, because 2 years ago, pre-COVID, none of us would have imagined how we would have responded to a global pandemic. 2 months ago, none of us would have imagined how we would have responded to what is in effect a war in Europe. And I may need to leave this meeting a little early, in about 25 minutes. I'm chairing a group that has been set up in Wales by the Welsh Government and our collective body of universities to provide a joint response. And it's aligned with a wider UK response. One of the things we're doing is twinning with universities in Ukraine. And my own university previously had a partner in Ukraine, Lviv National Academy of Arts. We have a very strong art school here at Cardiff Met. And we've been working with them and trying to provide support over the last 2 months. And that support has actually extended to using some of our own learning from the last 2 years, where instead of running our usual annual degree show, the culmination of the work of our students in art, we had to run it online for the last 2 years. This year, fortunately, we will be able to run our degree show on campus. But in Lviv, in Ukraine, their students can't possibly hold a degree show on campus this year. They're all bunkered down underground, avoiding all sorts of terrible things. But we're going to host their degree show for them online. So their students will be able to complete some of their work and submit their work, and then we will showcase it. And we'll try and do this around the world, because anyone can look at this degree show. And, you know, just a couple of months ago, none of us would have imagined being able to do this, but it's relatively easy. Similarly, we're twinning, we hope to be twinning with a university in Cardiff, which obviously in the opposite side of the country and in very, very difficult circumstances. Again, 2 months ago, none of us would have imagined that we had the aptitude, the skills, the experience to offer to help rebuild a university. So I just give this as an example of how we mustn't be limited by our own mindsets, our own past. You know, the future is a future that provides limitless possibilities for the reach and impact that we can have. And I think for all of us, it's a privilege, it's an honor to be in these positions. They're powerful positions, and we must use this power as a force for good all around the world. And we must use it in ways that, you know, rely on us to be. And, you know, we just heard the presentation from Lesotho about the need for resilience, agility, adaptability. You know, this is a very different realm from, you know, I'm in an institution that's 157 years old. You know, my predecessor 100 years ago was a custodian of a fairly static environment. We're working in very different environments, and I think it's incumbent on us to make the most of those challenging circumstances. Thanks.
Thank you very much for sharing these examples of collaboration, which I find very inspiring as well. And I also like this idea of really thinking beyond what we are used to imagining as our possibilities, that it actually is possible to inspire change and to support each other across countries, across institutions, rather than in being in competition. So I think that this is a very important message as well. Professor Fajana, you want to share as well on this topic on international collaboration. In our global survey, we actually saw that in terms of international research collaboration, that some of the institutions from Africa was actually reporting that the pandemic had opened up new opportunities for international collaboration. And some were even saying that even the quality of the collaboration had enhanced. So that being some of the positive impacts of the pandemic as well. Is this something that you see as well? And of course, you're welcome to share as you want. I just wanted to bring that into play as well.
All right, thank you very much, Trine. I think international collaboration is a must for all of us at this point in the trajectory that we are following in the education sector. In the past, we used to have so many MOUs, you know, this memoranda of understanding between universities. And you find out that not a good number or proportion of those MOUs are actually implemented. So people get discouraged having a conversation, trying to open up discussions with other institutions abroad. But what I would like to advise is that the environment in which we are now even suggests that we should do more of those conversations. Maybe not all the MOUs will be implemented, but at least let us try, because no university can afford to go alone. University means universal, and therefore there's need for us to lean on each other, especially for those of us in the developing countries, where we may not have all the technology that we require, we may not have all the expertise that we require to drive our programs. And now that information communication technology is available, I can get a professor from Cara's university teaching in my university. And that drives the kind of thing that we're talking about, reinventing the way things used to be, you know, in the past. So I believe that now, for those of us in the Global South, I think programs like double degrees would be more appropriate for us, so that our students can have a feel of what it is to study in their local environment, and also have a feel of what it is to study an international environment. So that way, with just one stone, you are killing two birds. I believe that is what we should be doing, you know, right now. Now, in my university, at the National University of Lesotho, we are on the process of writing up our strategic plan for 2022-2026. And many of these things are well articulated in our strategic plan. I believe that as soon as this is published, we'll be able to make this available to the rest of the world, and you'll be able to see the opportunities that exist in our small country, but very beautiful and very, very much ready for tourism, so that at least we can have an increase in number of foreign students in our university, and at the same time also expose our own students to foreign institutions. And this is the way the world should go, because now everything is becoming the same global place. The international labor market is becoming unified. The requirements are becoming like the same, and therefore we need to do more of these international collaborations. I'll just pause there now.
Thank you very much, Professor Fajana. Hilligje, I will turn over to you now because I see that time is running very fast. So I will let you take the next round of questions.
Thank you. This is a very fascinating conversation, and I see the connection between all the different presentations. And I would tend to even say to Jackie Yuk Choso in the Q&A, who says, I could tell there's a big gap between the Global South and Global North. One group is talking about peacemaking, leadership. The other group needs basic, simple stuff, such as qualified faculty members. How can the North help or work with the South? I would be tempted to say that this particular conversation actually tells something else, that all are looking for the same thing, a different kind of leadership for a different kind of university to lead us into the future, because you all seem to have picked up on one of the key lines of operation for UNESCO, building peace in the minds of people through a different kind of education and quality higher education, in order to transform our societies better and in order to develop the kind of education that is needed. So you all seem to respond also to the question that Andreas Corcoran in the Q&A is asking. Does the title of the webinar suggest that the current and tested system is no longer fit for purpose? How should universities transform in order to be more transformative in turn? And you've showed a few things where that could go. And I will put 3 words out to each of you that you can pick up. I think that one of the key topics for you, Cara Aitchison, was really to look at the compassionate leadership. But also you put in your paper much emphasis on the importance of revisiting higher education in order to give it this interdisciplinary twist. And I would like to maybe ask you how you see that happen. You gave some examples, but maybe you could expand on that, because this is called for by many in many conversations we have on the future of higher education. But what does it mean? How does it work? I think, Dr. Yamada, you have a bit of the same when you talk about the modern civilization class that you offer to your students, and it's a mandatory class. Which is actually also touching on different topics at the same time. Prevent isolation, prevent closing up of a society that was opening up, and due to COVID-19 is again at fear of closing up again. Then I like the notion of the need of connectivity that all 3 were calling for, but Dr. Fajana in particular also in this need for universities to really deploy global action to instigate excellence at the national level and thus with repercussions at the global level. So I think it's different ways of looking at one and the same thing, how to improve the kind of higher education that we can provide in order for ensuring that our students are future fit. That they are able to address the global challenges that we face in the best possible ways, and that we open up to a different kind of world. So can we go around, maybe Dr. Yamada first, to Dr. Aitchison next, and then Dr. Fajana.
Well, thank you very much, kind summary. of my talking. And, the university education is much more specialized, but I think that the importance of liberal arts subject and Dr. Fajana mentioned the term of STEM, science, technology, engineering, mathematics. But instead, we are now using the STEAM, science, technology, engineering, and arts and mathematics. So, and the art, the A is important. Otherwise, we are too much focusing on the STEM. But of course, it's a very important in our society to develop our society better. But we have to keep in mind the importance of art. The university, the medical science or engineering or political science, they much are focusing on their specialization, but we have to based on the the mind of arts, and it's a very difficult. The professors prefer to teach the student their specialties. So, and it's very difficult to persuade them to, include the art part of your subject. So, and our modern civilization course, we asked all faculty to join this course and remind them the importance of art. But still, perfectly realized.
Oh, that's wonderful. At the IAU, we also play with the word esteem. So we add to STEAM, we add an E at the beginning for education, for science, technology, art, and mathematics. And you can go on like that. But esteem is also the esteem of the own discipline, but the acceptance to actually dialogue with other disciplines. But to give the floor to Cara, you certainly will agree with the A part, because you just mentioned this link between Lviv in Ukraine and Cardiff Met, where the art department is so important. So maybe if you would wish to take the question and elaborate on it.
Yeah, thank you. So I genuinely believe that interdisciplinarity gives the bonds and bridges that I was speaking about earlier, both within the academy and between the academy and areas of society, economy, culture, environment that we might want to effect change in. If I give a little example from, I mentioned that my own university is 157 years old, and it was founded as a school of art and science. So it's been interdisciplinary since its very origins. And one of the strongest areas we have within the university is something that we call human-centered design. In fact, it's one of these 3 global academies that I referred to. And they use artistic and design thinking to develop products, many of which are commercial. We have spin-out companies, but they're also products that are, due to their human-centered nature, they're life-changing. So one of our most recent examples is a device that has helped by providing automated and animated comfort for dementia patients. We make what we call service robots that helped in COVID through disinfecting areas of hospitals, through delivering medication and meals to people who were infectious and couldn't come into human contact. So that interdisciplinary thinking between art and science is the key to the solutions. And if I'm a geographer by background, and of course, people argued 100 years ago that geography wasn't really a discipline. It was a mixture of lots of interdisciplinary different subjects. And I think it gives a particular way of seeing the world or thinking. And I'd really like us to instill that in all of our students, not just through, university education, from research right down through undergraduate to schools. In research in the UK, this week actually is the week when we have our research excellence framework results delivered. This is the big exercise that judges the quality of research every 5 or 6 years. And 10 or 12 years ago, interdisciplinary research was identified as a key area of this exercise. So that gave it a status that suddenly elevated it to an equivalent status to single disciplinary research. That then is important in funding terms. So it acted as a UK government lever, if you like, to enhance the status of interdisciplinary work. And I mentioned the Cardiff Met Edge, that ethical digital global entrepreneurial initiative. That's something that brings interdisciplinary thinking to our undergraduate students. But I think for me, the key to unlocking interdisciplinarity lies in schools, not in universities. And I have the remnants of a Scottish accent. And in Scotland, we have a very comprehensive schooling system where you study 5 or 6 subjects at what we call higher level. It's very different from the English system of A levels, where students tend just to study 3 subjects. If you choose 3 subjects, you can specialize only in humanities or in natural sciences. If you study 6 subjects, you can't specialize in that way. You inevitably develop interdisciplinary thinking. So I'm a great advocate of school systems like the International Baccalaureate, because I think that helps students develop a more complex way of seeing the world and being able to interrogate, analyze, and then provide solutions to some of the challenges in the world. So I think we need a joined up education system all the way from schools through to research that helps people to see the world as it really is. Thank you.
Yeah, wonderful. And you would be surprised that in France, it's even more disciplines that we have in one go until the very end of the baccalaureate. And there has been an attempt at reducing that over the last few years with a wave of, and successive waves of transformation of the school system, with many people up in arms to combat that. It's quite interesting how these systems actually find inspiration in other systems and do not always have the clues as to what is leading to this comprehensive approach to the world in which we live. I would like to give the floor now to Dr. Fajana on this particular topic, and then we have a few questions. I know that you will have to leave, Dr. Aitchison, good luck with your next tasks, but I hope that Dr. Yamada and Fajana will be able to stay on for the next questions as well. Thank you already.
Certainly. Yeah. Well, thank you very much, Lanta. I think you have taken us off now on a very interesting aspect of our discourse. Interdisciplinarity, creativity. We have a blend of arts and sciences. I think I cannot agree less with you on this particular point, because one out of the three main activities that drive a university is what we call community service. The others being the research functions, the teaching functions, and then the third, community service. From my own experience, I've discovered that if a university is going to do very well in the area of community service, then that institution must commit to interdisciplinary research, must be creative, must have a good blend of the arts and sciences. And I'll give you an example from the National University of Lesotho. There is a structure here we call the Innovation Hub. The Innovation Hub is a structure of the university that promotes innovativeness coming from research. And this research has to be interdisciplinary to make it to be very, very effective. So we rely on the pure arts, we rely on history, we rely on local plants, we rely on local medicine, we rely on waste products within the environment. All of those things you would call liberal arts. So our innovation hub is a melting pot for the arts and sciences. And let me excite you what happened during COVID. Because of the innovativeness of our innovation hub, our scientists were able to join ranks with local medicine men to produce an effective medicine for COVID. So in that team, you have botanists, you have pharmacists, you have chemical technologists, you have those who are in the area of biochemistry, and there is a local medicine man who joined the team, something that you regard as coming from the pure arts. But lo and behold, the concoction which they were able to devise had passed through a number of tests, such that even the WHO is excited about what has come out of that creativity. So I agree with this panel that indeed, for you to be able to excel and render community service that is credible and that will be accepted by the community you are serving, it's got to go beyond just STEM or even STEAM. It has to include all kinds of things like religion. It has to include things like history, like geography, and all of these things are important in assisting a university to do very well with community service. Let me just pause there. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for that. I see as well, like Trine earlier, that time is flying. So maybe I can give you the floor to both of you when it comes to another question that was asked. How can we actually look at education in a different way? So very quickly, the question was, what are new teaching and learning opportunities that you would see now post-COVID that would help orchestrate the kind of education that you envisage in your paper? You have 1 minute each, and then we will have to close, unfortunately. Dr. Yamada.
Thank you. You know, the same as other country, Japan educational field dramatically changed by COVID-19 because there used to be a very few opportunity for the student to appreciate the remote lecture by internet, but currently relatively common. So we have to utilize this new tool. It has, of course, a negative part. However, we may pursue a positive part of internet education and may invite the student all over the world by using common language like English.
Yeah. But also other languages, hopefully, because if we only use one, then we lose on the opportunity to dive deeper into the beautiful value of diversity. So we hope that people will also learn languages from Lesotho and from Japan, because that's where the future also lies, not to be all same, but enriched by the diversity. Thank you so much, Dr. Fajana.
Thank you very much. This is a very important question you've asked. As we go on with the fourth industrial revolution, we have to prepare our students to have the skills that they require, skills for entrepreneurship and skills for employability. The Council for Higher Education in Lesotho is driving this particular process, and we have been encouraged to include things like virtual learning, to include things like creativity, design thinking, all of those things that would equip our youth to be relevant in the fourth industrial revolution, which indeed is a digitally driven revolution. And for them to excel in that particular environment, all of these skills are important, and we are running with them. Thank you very much.
Wonderful. So I will give a few final closing words then back to you, Trine, just to thank the speakers for the wonderful inputs into a broader conversation at global level on the future of higher education. Also going back to this idea that was put in the chat by Dr. Cochrane, do we need to reinvent higher education, and then so how, and what is the future? How will we transform the higher education in a way that will help the institutions to really be transformative for the kind of future that we want. So next we will have another webinar to run up to the WEC 2022 on Thursday to look into the impacts of COVID-19 on higher education, where Trine will open the webinar with outcomes of our global survey report on the impact of COVID-19 on higher education, and then give the floor to our partners in regions to shed light on the global report from the regions with particular perspectives from Africa, the Arab world, from UNU in Japan, on Asia, from EUA in Europe. So if interested, that will be on Thursday. Don't hesitate to register and take part. And then we will go into the global conference, the UNESCO World Higher Education Conference on the future of higher education. We will report back on that. There will be a session also to debrief on the outcomes of the conference for those who cannot come to Barcelona or cannot even attend online. There is a website on the IAU website where you can find further information and where you can register to attend virtually. And then we will bring this conversation to the IAU General Conference in Dublin, where we hope to welcome you in October. So I would like to really thank you very much for this excellent conversation starter on these very important points that you raised. Trine, would you like to close officially?
Thank you very much, Hilligje. I'll just join you in thanking our speakers and reminding our audience as well that we were able here to discuss 4 out of the 38 articles. So I invite you all to download the magazine and to browse through it. It's really a rich source of thoughts and ambitions, also a way into some of the challenges that we are confronted with and that we are stronger trying to fight together, I think. So thank you all for your participation and to the speakers for having agreed to take part in this conversation. And there we close. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. It was good to see you in Japan. It's sad that I cannot travel there, and next I will hopefully one day come to Lesotho.
Welcome.
Yeah.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.